All right, let's take one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Tuesday morning. We got some heavy delays on the roadway as of right now. There's an accident at I-20 eastbound and Bush River Road that's causing extra heavy delays because the right lane is blocked. So be very careful as you're making your way through that area. And then outside of that, also have an accident at 12th Street at Veterans Memorial Freeway. Quick look at the weather. Today it's going to be hot, high of about 92. Same thing for tomorrow. There's your traffic and weather here on The Game. Oh, 9 o'clock on your Tuesday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on The Game. I, of course, am in the studios here in Columbia. Jack Veltri live on the scene of the SEC tournament. Hoover, Alabama. Jack, what's the vibe out in Hoover today? It's good. I'm looking at the weather right now. High today of 87 with some clouds, a very, very low percentage of rain. So I think you should be good for the day, though it is kind of a signature of the SEC tournament for rain to come in the first day or so to completely throw off the schedule for the rest of the week. That way, like Wednesday's final game has to be played on like Thursday morning, and that just sets everything up for chaos for the rest of the week. So I think for today, though, you should be good. Yeah, today 5:30 against Tennessee. By the way, we'll be talking with Eric Kane of VolQuest coming up here at 9:15. Get perspective on the other side. Also kind of ask him about how he's viewed how things have gone down here at South Carolina as well, considering the fact that he's covered the Vols program for several years there for VolQuest. But yeah, this could kind of be the end of it. Like today could be the last day of the Monty Lee / Paul Mainieri era. Like I know Paul's been gone for basically 2 months, but this is still the team that he's responsible for, and we could be seeing them play their final 9 innings coming up later today. Yeah, definitely so. We'll get more into this. Also talk about this Tennessee matchup coming up here in just a second. But first off, it is 9 o'clock. And as always, we must kick things off with our Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped. Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm. Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick Me Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9s. We did hear from Monty Lee yesterday as he was on the post-game show with Terry yesterday afternoon, as he's done each and every Monday since taking over as head coach back in March. And one of the questions that Terry asked him was, quite frankly, how do you get these guys locked in? It's been a lot of ups and downs in terms of focused and unfocused these past couple weeks. And here's what Monty Lee had to say about getting these guys focused on the task at hand for Hoover this week.
Yeah, look, I think that's the toughest thing as the leader of a team or, as a head coach. And just as a coach in general, is just trying to, communicate with your team when you're going through tough times to try to build the confidence back into kids. And I think ultimately what we try to do is just give them examples of success that we've had over the years, and also, just try to explain to them just how important this tournament is to a lot of the kids that are on this bus. This could be, the last time that some of these guys get to play college baseball. And, once the season ends, with the way things are in this day and age, a lot of guys, potentially are going on their own way in different ways. So we just want to try to, again, make sure they understand just how important trying to play our very best baseball is during this time of year, to make a run into the postseason, see what can happen. And look, we've been competitive with a lot of teams that we're going to play this week. So hopefully we can go out and just make it about the team. I think that's the most important thing. As you draw close to the end of the season, it's just about making it about the team and about the program. And hopefully our guys will be motivated to go out there and compete as hard as they can starting tomorrow.
You're either going to have a team that is really fired up, that knows their back's against the wall, and their only way to continue playing baseball past this week is to win every single game between now and Sunday, or you're going to have a team full of guys that are already kind of thinking about their next steps, whether it be transferring out, going to another level of baseball, whatever it may be, just kind of going through the motions of today and trying to get it over with. I don't know what version we're going to get, because I think we've seen a little mix of both these past couple weeks, but that's kind of how I view it. And again, Monty Lee does not have an easy job of trying to get these guys locked in and focused, knowing that they have a huge uphill battle against them.
It depends how the first few innings of this game go. Like, if South Carolina's in the game and they're up, yeah, I expect them to be, motivated to go out here and get the job done today. But if they're falling behind early and it's like 5-0 in like the fifth inning or something and they're losing, I think everyone kind of knows the season's over at that point. And we've seen it time and time again where a big deficit like that is too much for South Carolina to overcome. So, I mean, look, we'll see. I do expect them to battle. That's the way I saw it this past weekend out at Vanderbilt. Like, look, they were down 7-0 on Friday, after a few innings, and then they came back to make it a 7-5 game and ultimately lost 9-5. And then even on Saturday, they were up 3-0 in that game. So I think they're going to battle. I think a lot of those guys, like a Talmadge Lecroy, this could be his final game today. Like, it's crazy. Today is his 230th game at South Carolina. That is crazy. You don't ever really see guys stay at one school for 5 years like Lecroy has. So guys like him, they're going to be playing very hard. They have a few other seniors on this team that I'm sure will be going the same way. But it just really depends on how this game goes in the early stages. Like, yeah, if Tennessee comes out swinging and it's, 7-0 after like 2 innings, then yeah, it might be tough, but we'll see. It just depends on how things start off the bat.
Yeah, for Talmadge Lecroy, think about what you were doing in February of 2021 or February 2022. That's when he started his career here at South Carolina. Yes. It's been that long. That is insane. And again, he's had an up and down career, a hot cold relationship with his fan base based on when he was playing the hot corner a couple years ago and all that kind of stuff. But you do have to tip your cap for the fact that he has stayed committed here. He's never wavered. Again, through the ups and downs, he's gone out there and been a team guy this entire way through. And again, today's potentially the last day he wears a Carolina uniform.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think about. And for these guys, look, it's also a long bus ride to Hoover. It's 5.5 hours. Like, you want to make it count. And look, who knows how far they'll last. It may be over after today, but yeah, I definitely expect them to put their best foot forward and try to go out here and win this game especially.
So today is also the debut of the automatic ball strike challenge system that will be used throughout the tournament this week. Again, the anticipation is that it will likely go full-time next year in the SEC at the very least. We've seen this obviously in the past with things like the extra bag at first base that get tried out during the week of the tournament. Again, should it be tried out during a week that's as important as this for teams trying to lock in for the postseason? Debatable, but they're doing it nonetheless. And apparently, I know you posted the picture of it or retweeted the picture of it yesterday. They have the how-to guide on exactly how this is going to work out at Hoover this week. I'm assuming in the press box or at various points around the stadium.
It'll probably be all over the stadium, to be honest. I'd be shocked if it's not like on the concourse. I'll see today, and we'll talk about tomorrow. But, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this thing goes. It'll be really interesting to see how the challenges are going to work, because it's obviously going to be just like the MLB, where players have to tap on their heads, and it's kind of in the players' hands on what they do. So I think the catchers are probably going to have the most success with this. I could see a lot of challenges going wrong, but at the same time, man, this is meant to, it's just like the MLB, where you're hoping this holds umpires accountable. It's a wider strike zone from my understanding, but I'm looking forward to really seeing what this thing looks like and how often teams will use it, because it's the first time they get to use this thing all year.
And, you mentioned the beginning of the game being very indicative on how South Carolina's attitude is going to be in this thing. I almost wonder, if you're Monty Lee, are you very aggressive with allowing your players to just go for it early in the game, potentially keeping you from, getting yourself in a hole if, getting some balls and strikes called the wrong way? You really got nothing to lose at this point, right? I mean, everybody, and we see this in Major League Baseball, everybody goes about it differently. Some teams are willing to wait later in the game to save it for more important moments, as opposed to some teams that aren't afraid to use them up in the first or second inning. So I'll be interested to see, because again, there's going to be calls outside of the zone, right? Well, we know officiating and umpiring in the SEC, there's going to be some bad calls probably early on in this game. I'm wondering to see how willing Monty Lee is to let these guys maybe be aggressive with it early in the game to try and not let the game get away from them.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so you get 3 challenges. You really have, it's a split-second decision you got to make. Like, you got to be absolutely sure that you are making the right call, because, I mean, you have 2 seconds to tap on your head, and then you get it right or wrong. And it's a pretty quick process. It'll be on the video board out there in Hoover and right field. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this thing goes again. But, yeah, it's definitely going to be something where you're really putting a lot of trust in the players to get these calls right.
Yeah, and again, we'll be interested to see how South Carolina handles this, as well as everybody else in the rest of the tournament. Things get rolling coming up, as Jack mentioned, in a little less than 90 minutes. Missouri and Ole Miss. The first game coming up is 10:30 Eastern time, 9:30 local time out there in Hoover. You get Kentucky and Vanderbilt later on today, against South Carolina and Tennessee at 5:30, and the nightcap being LSU and Oklahoma. I was looking at the latest projections for D1 baseball, Baseball America yesterday. The SEC has 12 teams that are currently in their projections to be in the field of 64. The only teams, I believe, that aren't, obviously, South Carolina, Missouri, LSU, and then I believe, is it Vanderbilt that's on the outside?
It should be, because they're 73rd in the RPI.
Yeah, so those are the 4 teams that truly know their only path to getting in is playing their way through. Now, other teams like Kentucky, they would certainly love to win another game or so to make themselves feel comfortable, but everybody else in the tournament knows they're going to be playing next week in regionals, and if anything else, they're just fighting for better seeding at this point.
Yeah, if you're asking me, like, who really needs a good run here at the SEC tournament, I would say maybe, like, probably, Tennessee could benefit from continuing to play well. I think if Tennessee goes on a run here and makes it to maybe Sunday, or, to Sunday in the, or Saturday, whatever day it is, the SEC championship game.
Sunday.
It's on Sunday. It's on Sunday. If they can make it maybe to Saturday or Sunday, I think there's a case for them to potentially host. Maybe that's a little bit of wishful thinking. But I think Kentucky's a team that, Kentucky probably needs another win just to solidify itself for sure. But, as far as that goes, I think, Vanderbilt needs to make it to potentially the SEC championship game just to have a chance. I think the RPI is way too low right now. But like LSU, Carolina, Missouri, teams like that, they're not making the tournament unless they win the conference title.
And as it stands right now, again, this is per Baseball America. They have 5 SEC teams projected as top 8 national seeds, that being Georgia at 3, Texas at 4, Auburn at 6, Alabama at 7, and Texas A&M at 8.
Yeah, those all make sense. I don't know if anyone else would host. I don't think Arkansas, Mississippi State, unless they go on a run here and win this thing, I just don't see it. I think a lot of these are going to end up being 2 seeds in other regionals.
So we'll see what happens, but a lot on the line this week out there in Hoover. Again, Carolina's only pathway to play more baseball is to win every single game. That starts with Tennessee later on today. First pitch at 5:30, pregame coverage trying to get 5:15 right here on the game. We'll get the Tennessee perspective on things coming up next with Eric Kane of VolQuest.com as he joins us on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines as we continue on with the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry on your Tuesday on the game.
Are you a small business owner, a church, or other entity in need of a new HVAC system? Well, AAA Heating and Air has exciting news for you then. AAA now offers financing to qualified organizations to aid them in installing a new light commercial HVAC system. It's as easy as calling AAA Heating and Air for a quote or finding them online at callAAAtoday.com. Tell them Jack from 107.5 The Game sent you. At AAA Heating and Air, they've got your back. They're offering up to 12-month payment plans on repairs with no credit check required. That's right. No need to worry about your credit score in this case. As long as you're a homeowner with a valid bank account, you'll be good to go. So take control of your comfort today by giving a call to AAA Heating and Air at 803-677-1500. Again, the number to call AAA is 803-677-1500. Give them a call today and breathe easy again.
All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on your Tuesday on the game as we get set for the SEC tournament to start again coming up here in a little over an hour with Missouri and Ole Miss in game number 1. We are waiting for about 5:30 local time, 5:30 Eastern time, 4:30 local time out there in Hoover for Carolina to square off with Tennessee in the 15-10 matchup. Give us more insight into that matchup from the other side of things. From VolQuest.com is Eric Kane joining us now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Eric, appreciate your time. Happy SEC tournament day to you.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. It's the official kickoff to the postseason and one of the best weeks of the year, no doubt, in our sport. So the SEC tournament, looking forward to it.
Do you enjoy the annual trip to Hoover? Jack's out there right now, got in yesterday. What's your thought on Hoover and the SEC tournament every year?
That's awesome. I mean, they do such a phenomenal job putting on that event, and this week's not going to be any different. I mean, the weather changes plans, and you got baseball 1 a.m, and it's just as long as the team that you're watching or covering is not playing in one of those games, it's truly a beautiful thing. But no, it's a great event. It's so much fun seeing all these fan bases come together and seeing some good baseball. And those teams that play on the weekend, I mean, you get there and like a lot of times you run out of pitching, so it gets even more fun. So really looking forward to it.
Hey, what's up, Eric? You got Cam Appenzeller starting today for Tennessee. He obviously is a former South Carolina commit. Just your initial thoughts on the way he's looked for Tennessee so far this year, and kind of what do you expect out of him today?
Yeah, Cam was phenomenal. Excuse me. He was one of the best relievers in the SEC for the first 2/3 of the year. I mean, he was mid-year stopper of the award, watch list type guy. I mean, he was really, really good as a true freshman. Then in the last month or so, he's kind of hit a lot of people call it that freshman wall maybe. He's fought through adversity, and he's not looked like himself probably the last month or so. His last appearance against Oklahoma in the regular season, he looked more like himself, and that was encouraging. So, tremendous talent, a guy that chose to come to Tennessee, could have been an early round pick and went on and started his clock as a professional athlete, but a guy that's long. Velo's not super high, but it's kind of deceiving in terms of, where he releases the ball. It kind of comes at you really quick. Breaking ball's phenomenal. He's got a lot of passion when he's on the mound. He's a good one. He's going to be one of the best pitchers in the country next year, in my opinion, and he will be a starter moving forward. He's been more of a reliever this year, but he is a starting pitcher, and Tennessee might need him to be a starter in a regional game, so that's why they're giving him the start at Hoover, and I know that he's going to be excited for it.
Eric Kane, VolQuest.com, joining us here on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Some significant development yesterday as one of the best offensive players for the Vols, Reese Chapman, going to be out in this game after taking a line drive to the face yesterday. What's the latest you can tell us about him?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. This is the second player that's been hit with a line drive this year for Tennessee. The other one was Stone Lawless in a game, and he missed about 2 weeks, and he's been back, and then that's been great. Reese Chapman's a great teammate. He's a senior. Tennessee fans love him. He's having a phenomenal year. I mean, again, you mentioned one of the better bats in the order. He plays Gold Glove caliber defense in right field. And he's really, again, he's having the year of his life. And so it's really, really unfortunate. If anybody's ever watched baseball practice at this level, really at any level, it's controlled chaos. There's so much going on, and sometimes this stuff happens. Tony Vitello was struck by a line drive in the face a couple of years ago before the season started. So you hate to see that. Going to be out today. We'll see if Tennessee wins. We'll see what his prognosis is for the rest of the week and, of course, for regionals. But a devastating blow for Tennessee yesterday, no doubt, because, again, he is a great outfielder. That park is huge, a lot of grass in that outfield, and he's been a very consistent bat hitting sixth. He's sometimes hitting fourth or fifth, but he's been hitting fifth here lately in the Tennessee order, and, he's not going to be in there today against the Gamecocks.
Feels like Tennessee's really come a long way since the days of losing a series to Kent State or being swept in that forgettable series against Vanderbilt. What's the biggest difference between the team then versus now?
Well, I think you get a lot of guys that have grown up. This is a young team, and everybody wants to point to, well, there's no Tony Vitello here, and he's in San Francisco, and Tennessee's falling apart and all that. And I mean, yeah, Tony's a huge loss. The only sitting college coach to ever go be a manager in the majors. I mean, that's phenomenal work, right? But even if Tony was here, this is Tony's team that he constructed, and it was poised with tasked with replacing 8 of 9 starters in the field. That's tough work. So a lot of young guys, a lot of sophomores. Tennessee has a really talented sophomore class, and they struggled for, at least half the season, but they've really come along. Manny Marin is playing like one of the better shortstops in the SEC. He's a sophomore. Levi Clark, you look at his season average, and that's not anything that's going to scare anybody. Look at his SEC average. Levi Clark, the first baseman, had a phenomenal SEC season for Tennessee. Jay Abernathy, gets some starts here and there, and he was an everyday starter for Tennessee, but didn't really pan out for him. But he gets a start. He gets a start usually about once a week or twice a week, and he's a havoc on the base paths. Plays great center field. So it was a young team that's grown up, and they're kind of figuring out who they are. I mean, Tennessee bullpen options are not plentiful. Tennessee doesn't have much in the bullpen, right? And dealing with some injuries in the starting rotation right now as well. So that offense that was kind of slow out of the gates, it's carried them the last 3 or 4 series, and Tennessee was able to finish strong, winning 3 of the past 4 weekends and get to 500 in SEC play. So it's a team that has grown up. It's a team that is hitting the crap out of the baseball right now, really talented on the offensive end. And when you get to that front end of the rotation, it's really good. Now, South Carolina's not going to see that today, obviously, but it's a team that's kind of had to figure itself out a little bit. But it has grown, and it's turned into a regional team, and it's a number 2 seed that nobody wants in their region come in 2 weeks.
I always like to get different perspectives from people outside of the Columbia bubble. Of course, you've been covering this Tennessee team for several years, and you've seen them obviously achieve the ultimate goal of winning the College World Series a couple years ago. The transition from Vitello to Elander has gone pretty well, and you guys are pretty well positioned in the postseason no matter what happens this week out in Hoover. On the flip side of things, Carolina is obviously falling quite a bit from where they were a handful of years ago. From your perspective, from Knoxville, from an outsider of Carolina baseball, how have you viewed what's happened to this program and where they're at compared to even just a handful of years ago where they were still thought to be, one of the better competitive teams in the conference?
Yeah, and again, I'll say all this by prefacing, I do not follow South Carolina baseball every single day. Very, very outside opinion here. Again, I follow Tennessee, and I cover Tennessee. But, the hire never made sense for me, Paul Mainieri. I mean, he'd been out of the game for a couple of years, and the game had changed. NIL, rev share, transfer portal. All those things he didn't have to deal with the last time he was coaching at LSU. And so that made great, phenomenal coach, and, his history and his resume speak for itself. But I just thought that hire just made no sense given to where, college athletics is just a couple years later. So, I thought it was the smart decision to part ways with him. It looked like South Carolina was playing some inspired baseball after the move. Still losing games, but losing them at a close rate. I know everybody likes Monty Lee down there. 12 losses in a row, that's obviously not great. So I'm intrigued to see where that program goes. But as you guys know, again, from an outsider's perspective, one of the greatest baseball traditions in the conference, great ballpark, great fans. The SEC is better when South Carolina is good, and I think it'll be intriguing to see kind of where they go. I know there's a lot of chatter on the outside. Coastal Carolina's coach, I know Tennessee had a lot of interest in him as well whenever Tony Vitello left. So I'll be intrigued to be watching kind of what the next move is for that program.
Got about another minute or two here with Eric Kane from VolQuest, who we appreciate joining us. Real quick thoughts with ABS. What do you think about it? What's your excitement level for automatic balls and strikes this week?
Well, I think it's been a tremendous success at the major league level. I'm a 162er. If I'm not watching, I'm listening. I follow those Atlanta Braves. Tough loss last night, 12-0. Not sure what happened there against the Marlins, but I think it's been a tremendous success at the major league level. Now, I know the SEC tournament kind of experiments with some things with the first base bag a couple years ago, and now that's implemented in our game, and then that's been fine. Obviously, ABS is not going to be in regional or supers or the World Series, but I'm intrigued because some coaches are going to lose their minds when a catcher, when a hitter, when a pitcher's challenging everything, because you're in the box, every strike it's a ball. You're on the mound, every ball it's a strike. What are you doing? And so it's why whenever they say to challenge, I'm like, don't listen to the players. They're too emotional, right? So I think it's going to be great theater. I think it's going to be funny because, who has the right to Major League ball players are Major League ball players. They can challenge whenever they want to. They've earned that right. It's a little bit different here on the college realm. So I'm intrigued to see what the strategy is. I think there'll be some teams that say, don't challenge anything. We're not going to see it next week in regionals. Don't need it now, and there'll be some other teams that are very instrumental with it, and we'll push that boundary a little bit. So what's the strike zone going to look like? How is it going to differ from each batter at the plate? These batters are being measured. They're taking their measurements. I've got more questions than answered, but I'm like everybody else. I'm intrigued to see what this looks like. I think eventually if this comes to college, I think that's fine, right? I don't know if it's going to be just a rousing success here this week in Hoover that people might want, but again, you got to start somewhere. So I'm intrigued to see.
We're all going to learn right along with you, man. We appreciate it, and enjoy the week out there.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Eric Kane of VolQuest.com. Again, 5:30 first pitch between South Carolina and Tennessee today over in Hoover. We'll come back. We'll hit our next head coaching head-to-head. Dan Fitzgerald versus James Ramsey. That's coming up next on the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri with you here on your Tuesday on the Game. We are potentially on the last day of South Carolina's 2026 season. If they were to lose today, that's it for them. Of course, they win. They will advance to tomorrow to take on Arkansas. But we'll cross that bridge if and when we do get there. Regardless, we're getting closer to figuring out who the next head coach for South Carolina is going to be within these next couple weeks, and we assume it's going to be either a active head coach or an assistant that is on one of these teams that's going to be in the postseason starting next week with regional play. And we've been doing our head coaching gauntlet for the past week, really 2 weeks. And Dan Fitzgerald has been the one that has survived longer than anybody so far, won all the matchups he was in last week, and then won his head-to-head yesterday as well. And today, I feel like we get to one of the most interesting ones we've had so far, Jack, because we have Dan Fitzgerald of Kansas versus James Ramsey of Georgia Tech. Now, this is a name that has come up a little bit more recently. You've wrote about it. I know J.C. Sherbert had it on his list the other day, and rightfully so. Ramsey's doing a phenomenal job at Georgia Tech as they are pretty much locked into being one of those top 8 seeds with regional starting coming up here next weekend. And in year one, he has absolutely done a phenomenal job in Atlanta.
Oh, he's done a magnificent job. I mean, it's incredible how good Georgia Tech is this year. 45-9 on the season, just unbelievable. This could potentially be the top overall seed in the NCAA tournament, depending on how things go whenever the official bracket comes out. Like, Georgia Tech is legitimately a threat to get to Omaha and then some. You look at the job he's done so far. I mean, ACC Coach of the Year, ACC regular season champion. I mean, they're going to be the favorites to win the ACC tournament this week. And it's his first year. It's his first year on the job. He was at Georgia Tech from 2019 to 25 as an assistant coach, but now he stepped into the role of head coach. And then before that, he was at Florida State for a year as an assistant coach. But so he's relatively new in the coaching space, I would say, less than a decade of coaching experience, only 1 year of head coaching experience at this point, not even a full year yet. But you look at his background, I mean, he played at Florida State on some really good teams for a legendary coach like Mike Martin. So, learning from a guy like that at a younger age, yeah, definitely does help for sure. And then he was a first-round pick of the Cardinals in the 2012 MLB draft. And, after a bunch of years in the minors, ended up getting into coaching. And he's only 36 years old, Tyler. So he, by all accounts, he's the youngest coach on, when hot boards start to roll out like they have been. I mean, he's going to be the youngest coach you're potentially looking at hiring at South Carolina.
And, we talk about when you make a head coaching hire, a lot of times you're looking for the exact opposite of what you had before. And just from an age standpoint, you're talking about somebody that's 30 years younger that's obviously going to be a little bit more relatable to this crop and era of talent in college baseball. That's a big plus for him. Again, it's only his first year. And you also look at the fact, and again, he's been an assistant at Georgia Tech since 2019 under Danny Hall, and that was a program that was consistently making regionals on just about a year in, year out basis, though they hadn't been to a Super or the College World Series since 2006. So consistently good, but not a team that was making any kind of deep run in the NCAA tournament. He has the opportunity to advance them on, and again, with how good this team is, they should be able to at least get out of the regional coming up next week. And so it's kind of that balance, again, that we talk about with a lot of these guys of, okay, you inherited something that was pretty good and kept it going or took it to that next level compared to a guy like Fitzgerald that took over a program that wasn't really doing a whole lot and has made them the best they've ever been.
That's the debate here, because I don't doubt that Ramsey's a really good coach. Like, obviously, Georgia Tech has some history with baseball of being good. Like, they made the tournament, last year, 22, 21. Like, they've made the tournament the last couple of years and, are in a much better place when Ramsey took over compared to Fitzgerald taking over Kansas, like you said, Tyler. The thing is, though, I mean, look, Ramsey, I think Georgia Tech is probably going to be in Omaha this year. I think they have a very good chance to win the College World Series. I mean, forget about the fact he was taking over a great situation. He was the guy to get them, hypothetically speaking here, to win their first ever College World Series. That's the one thing Georgia Tech has failed to do in its history. They've only been a runner-up once. So if he's able to get them to the mountaintop, this season, yeah, I think he probably elevates above a guy like a Fitzgerald. But I think there's proof in the pudding of the fact of the matter is Fitzgerald. He's been the popular pick here over our last few head-to-heads, simply because he's led a turnaround. He's led a rebuild. There's proof in the pudding of that. And he's got, as much as we talk about Georgia Tech potentially being a title contender, I think Kansas is right along there with them. I think Kansas, while they may not be, they're getting close to 40 wins this year. They're only a few wins behind Georgia Tech. I mean, look, Kansas will probably be a hosting seed in a regional and have a very good chance to, go on a deep run this postseason. So I think Kansas and Fitzgerald, the job he's doing there, I think, is a little bit more impressive than a guy that, took over what we can consider a pretty good situation out there at Tech.
Now, both of these coaches, we talked about Fitzgerald the other day, where even with his contract extension recently, he's still not going to be making over $1 million even at the end of this current deal. James Ramsey, and again, he's a first-year head coach, so he wasn't going to be signed to a massive deal right off the jump. As of right now, his deal totals out at $450,000 a year. So you have the opportunity to offer him a lot more than what Georgia Tech is currently. Now, that being said, I'm assuming Georgia Tech is probably going to be reworking that contract maybe within the next week or so because of how good of a job he's done to try and hang on from him. So that number is likely going to go up. But for the time being, you do have a significantly better offer you can put on the table compared to what he's being paid right now.
Yeah, you can definitely offer him a lot more. You could probably double it at the very least. The thing I wonder, though, forget about the contract. The thing I wonder, though, is how much different will the resources be? Mm-hmm. Now, Georgia Tech has some history with college baseball. I think they've done a pretty good job, obviously, of putting their money where their mouth is in terms of giving Tech the resources to work with. It can always improve. Obviously, I don't know the resources for sure, but it seems like you don't go 45-9 in the regular season with next to nothing to work with. You have to have something there. Is it on the same level as like what a South Carolina can provide? I don't know. Probably not. But I think that might be the ultimate thing is like, and Ramsey's been there for a few years now. Again, he was an assistant there. The discussion with a lot of these guys is, especially with like a Schnall, I don't know about a Fitzgerald. I don't know many people that would love being in Kansas, but like, maybe Ramsey likes being in the Atlanta area, being at Georgia Tech, winning the way they are. Maybe, his family situation has been pretty good there. These are all things you have to consider, but there's no doubt South Carolina can offer him more than whatever Georgia Tech is offering him. Not just from a contract standpoint, but just everything in general.
So what's our ruling? Fitzgerald versus Ramsey. Who advances to tomorrow?
This is very tough because this is where it gets really, really tricky. Ramsey's a very good coach, and so is Fitzgerald. But I think there is something to be said about the guy that has literally led the turnaround that South Carolina is going to have to go through over the next few years. You need someone that can take you through those uncharted waters that are going to be difficult to navigate. And not saying Ramsey can't do it. He certainly can. In my opinion, he's a top 3 coach you need to hire for this job if you can't get 2 other guys. I think that's Schnall, Fitzgerald, and then I think that's Ramsey. I am going to stick with Fitzgerald here just because what he is doing at Kansas is insanely impressive and, leading it with not as many resources as most teams around the country.
Yeah, I agree. I think Fitzgerald taking what Kansas was and turning it to what it is now, more applicable to what he's going to have to do here at Carolina. Ramsey's a really good coach, and I think he's going to continue to be one for a long time. Again, he's probably going to get paid a lot more money this offseason from Georgia Tech to keep him around. If not, he's going to take some other big job somewhere. But, yeah, I think Fitzgerald, and you're right, too. I think if you're talking about a top 3, Ramsey should definitely be in that 3 with Schnall, Fitzgerald, and James Ramsey. So we'll see what the ultimate decision is, but Jason Fitzgerald continues on for another day coming up tomorrow as we continue on with our head coaching head-to-head gauntlet. We'll come back, wrap up the hour, tell you about what happened last night in the NBA Conference Finals as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry on your Tuesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Felcher along with you here on your Tuesday on the game. You know, Jack, I've seen the discussion in the past couple days, national radio, some people in Atlanta, around the country talking about, man, the NBA playoffs just been a little bit dull, a little bit boring, a lot of blowouts, a lot of one-sided games. Well, the Western Conference Finals clearly took exception to that because last night we got what is going to be very hard to beat is maybe the best game of this postseason and probably will be of it when it's all said and done. Spurs over the OKC Thunder in double overtime, 122 to 115. A very long game, very back and forth game, delivered on all fronts, and maybe the surprise to some, the Spurs handing OKC their first loss of the postseason.
This Spurs team is legit. They are very good. But I got two words for you. Victor Wembanyama. He's insane. 41 points last night, 24 rebounds, 14 of 25 from the field, 1 of 2 from three-point range. That one three-pointer came at a very important time in this game from way downtown. This team is just so loaded from top to bottom. And you look at it for OKC, I mean, look, losing a game one on your home floor after having so much rest, that's got to be a little bit of a shell shock. But you look at the performance, I mean, is it really that much of a surprise? I mean, SGA didn't have his best game. I mean, yeah, he had 24 points, 12 assists, but he went 7 of 23 from the floor. Jalen Williams played pretty well. But beyond that, I mean, the front court did nothing. I mean, Chet Holmgren and Hartenstein, I mean, really didn't do anything in this game. They combined for 10 points and 10 rebounds. And when you're going up against a guy like Wembanyama who just cannot be stopped, you got to do something. And really, like, one of the only guys to do something yesterday was Alex Caruso, who had 31 points and 8 threes. So a tough loss for OKC, no doubt. But I think it just goes to show that the Spurs are very much legit and they have a chance to win this series.
Well, and for Chet Holmgren, and points-wise, this was his worst game of the postseason so far. But you can make up for all that by effectively defending Victor Wembanyama. It just didn't seem like you wanted anything to do with him, right? Like, you're the big. You're supposed to go, and I get it, he's bigger than you, but you're still supposed to be the one that's the enforcer that's restricting him, and he didn't do any of that because Wembanyama went out there and just played absolutely out of his mind.
I mean, look, the Wembanyama is massive. I mean, 7'4" is just absolutely nuts. But I mean, look, you got to do a good job of defending him, and it just looked so easy for him yesterday. And if you're Chet Holmgren, you got to do a better job of him. I mean, you're 7'1". You should be able to stack up against him, in the paint. But Wembanyama is one of the best players in the world, and I mean, he may be the best player in the world. It's just absolutely insane how much he can take over a game.
So do you buy into the narrative? Because, of course, now it was broken over the weekend by Shams Charania, but SGA was awarded the MVP once again last night before the game. Victor Wembanyama was in the race for that. Do you buy into the narrative like Victor Wembanyama going out there to prove a point last night, if anything, by saying, hey, maybe I should have been the MVP?
I don't know. I listened to his response. Somebody asked him straight up if he feels like he's the best player in the world. And, he didn't obviously say yes or anything. So I don't think he really looks at it. I take that answer in a similar vein to how he probably approached the whole MVP conversation. Like, at the end of the day, if the Spurs win this series, like, I think that's what matters more to him than not winning the MVP. Like, he'll get his MVPs someday for sure. He's still so young and, only 22 years old. Like, he's going to be him and SGA are going to be the face of this league, for years to come. But I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal to Wembanyama other than just going out there and dominating on the court.
Do you think the Eastern Conference Finals can hold a candle to what we saw last night?
No, I don't. I think it'll be an entertaining series in the ECF. I'd like to think the Knicks are going to probably run through the Cavs, but I could see that series going maybe 6 games. But I think just the Spurs Thunder, it's just such a more entertaining matchup with those two teams because they're two of the best young teams in the league. I mean, these are teams that, keep in mind, for years we're going through rebuilds and drafting players. I mean, it is just wild to see just how dominant these teams could be for years to come.
I will say it's also cool. I know they didn't win, but I think OKC continues to have the best crowd environment in
I
the
would say
NBA
so.
postseason, and they had everybody wearing the same shirts last night. So that looked by standing up until they scored their first bucket, which took several minutes in the game last night. But still, those are the kind of environments that not every team can generate, and it's really cool when you get to see those games at OKC and see how the crowd is. Again, even though they lost last night, I still think that is probably the toughest environment to go in and win, which is all that more of a credit to the Spurs for what they were able to do last night.
That environment is nuts. It's going to be, it's paramount for OKC to get game 2 here. You cannot go to San Antonio down 0-2 and expect to win this series. So really need to find a way to win tomorrow night when you're playing against the Spurs.
Game number 2 tomorrow, Eastern Conference Finals. Game number 1 coming up tonight. We'll talk about that coming up tomorrow. We'll get into some SEC conversation coming up in the 10 o'clock hour as the Extra Point rolls along on your Tuesday on the Game. right, welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling, Heating, and Plumbing. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on your Tuesday on the Game. Coming up in about 15 minutes, let you hear Chris Clark's conversation with Gamecock transfer offensive lineman Carter Miller, as learned a little bit more about him and what he's experienced through his first couple of months here at South Carolina. We don't have a depth chart yet, Jack, but I would assume Carter Miller is probably going to be your starting center when the season rolls around.
I would guess so. Most likely, probably.
Yeah, so unless we hear something otherwise, we're going to assume that. And again, you'll learn more about him coming up here in about 15 minutes. Speaking of football, by the way, Jack, we'll get into what Paul Feinbaum had to say about the SEC coming up here in just a minute, considering the fact that this could be the final day for South Carolina baseball if they lose to Tennessee later on today. It is another 109 days until you will cover a live sporting event again when Carolina takes on Kent State in week number 1, 109 days from now.
Yeah, it's crazy. The summer it'll be a little bit of a drag because we'll have nothing really, going on in terms of Gamecock athletics, besides the coaching search, which will take us through June. But yeah, man, I mean, SEC Media Days, I don't know how many days that's until, but, that'll be what's next. And then after that, it'll be another month and a half till the season really gets started. So looking forward to it.
Well, we still have a lot of days, again, in between now and when the season starts. So I guess technically we're 102 days away from week 0. So you're almost 100 days until some form of college football. But there are two narratives that I think are the biggest headlines of this offseason that keep making headlines over and over and over again, and we'll continue to talk about them over and over and over again as we learn more information or we get different perspectives on this. And that, of course, is the 24-team college football playoff, where they have until December 1st to decide if that's going to be the future of college football or not. And is the SEC really falling that much farther behind the Big Ten, which is something that Paul Feinbaum went on the Crane and Company podcast the other day and was asked about. And he says, we got to stop making alibis for the SEC.
I'm going to spare you what a lot of my colleagues say because it makes me sick. When somebody comes on for a question like that and says, well, the Big Ten may have won the last 3, but the SEC is deeper, 1 to 16. Like, what does that mean? Let's quit trying to alibi. It's at the top of the SEC where the problem has occurred. All these other things have happened, and I don't think it's a reason to go hide under a rock, but nor do I think it's a reason for SEC fans to find anything that they can and beat their chest about. Let's just be real about it. Is my message to all of you, not to you specifically, but to the people in the SEC who just won't let this go.
Well, and I think it's always, and again, Paul Feinbaum, kind of the voice of the SEC, obviously, so his opinion matters a lot, but I think it's always important to keep in perspective that what the SEC did for basically 20 years is something that we're probably never going to see replicated in college football ever again, with winning all those national championships, and a lot of those were certainly Alabama, but still the SEC was able to carry the crown of being the best conference in college football for so long, and then the tide started to turn away, right? And here's the thing for me, and this is the point I always bring up. For one, the SEC still has a ton of talent. They had the most players drafted in the NFL once again this past year, set their own record in the process of doing that, by the way. And it's not like SEC teams are losing in the first round, right? Like Ole Miss was in the semifinals last year, coming very close to beating Miami and playing for a national championship. Texas was driving to tie the game in the Cotton Bowl against Ohio State 2 seasons ago. Alabama in the Final 14 playoff went to overtime with Michigan. All those teams were a couple of steps away from being in and playing for national championships. Will they have won them? I don't know. But again, it's not like it's this grand fall off. Yes, the Big Ten has won all those championships, and this year has won all these significant titles when it comes to the major sports that we talk about. And we'll see if UCLA can do that with college baseball and really kind of round things out. But, I'm not hitting the panic button. I just think at some point things are going to level out, and they kind of are.
Exactly. I don't think there's any need to – no. The panic button should not even be a thought. The SEC is still doing very well with, the additions of Oklahoma and Texas have been very good. For the most part, the SEC is still in a very good position when you look at, they may not be winning the national championship every year in these, major sports, but still they're very much in the race every single year. And you've always got to worry about the SEC from that standpoint of just how many teams are making the college football playoff, how many teams are going to be in Omaha this year, the NCAA tournament. I mean, Florida just won the national championship, 2 seasons ago. I mean, the SEC will be fine. It's a lot more of a crapshoot, I think, in these tournaments. Baseball's, I think, the one where the SEC is for sure the most dominant. I think by a wide margin too. Basketball, football, now with the expanded playoff and the expanded NCAA tournament field, yes, that's going to get more SEC teams in potentially, but still, it's a race to the top to win. I think the Big Ten is a lot more on the same level playing field as the SEC in those two sports in particular.
Well, and I think why this is such a big conversation, is because the SEC reigned supreme for so long. And again, Alabama did a lot of that heavy lifting, but still, this is the one conference that really kind of operates or has the mindset of one for all type of thing. Again, it just means more SEC chance, all that kind of stuff that I don't think you get in the other conferences, particularly when it comes to football. There's not Big Ten pride from top to bottom where, the Purdues of the world are kind of latching on to the success of Ohio State and Michigan, Indiana, and stuff like that. Same thing with the ACC. When Clemson and Florida State were winning national championships, that wasn't something like Boston College was waving a flag for necessarily. The SEC is its own unique kind of thing where everybody in the conference kind of feels like they play a role in the success of the conference, whether that's true or not. And I think that's something that a lot of people outside this bubble have been trying to tear down a little bit, because I think it really bothered them that the SEC was able to wave that flag and have that sense of pride for so long. Now, again, I think the question to ask, and please feel free to weigh on the Firehouse Subs text line at 803-404-6100, should we care? Should we care how good the SEC is, or should you just really be focused on your team? If South Carolina goes 12-0 in the regular season, wins the SEC, runs through the playoffs and wins the national championship, do we care if the rest of the conference is down? If everybody else in the conference is going 8-4 and 9-3, does that matter if you're having your own success? This is the one conference I think you have to ask that question in.
It's the same way I look at the way bowl games now work, where there's always this, every year it feels like when the SEC doesn't do good in bowl games, it feels like it happens quite often. There's this big narrative out there about how the SEC struggles in bowl games and how they're overrated and all this and that. When have we ever really, since when do bowl games matter now, right? Guys opt out, it's just not, you're not playing these teams at full strength. So that's the same way I look at just everything in general with the SEC of does it really, I think more people are focused on their own team rather than are you going to be rooting for the rest of the SEC to do well? I'm sure if you ask some people, they'll say yes, but I think most people are more concerned about how their own team is doing and
sure.
Couldn't stand the sight of rooting for a potential SEC rival.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing as well. It's okay, when Alabama was playing for national championships, or Georgia or Auburn or Florida, whoever, were you rooting for those other teams just for the sake of SEC pride? I always lean towards no, in particular, Alabama all those years. I was never rooting for them. Okay, I understood they were probably going to win a lot of those because of how good they were, but I was never actively rooting for the Crimson Tide for the sake of SEC pride. But it is something that I think we all retroactively latch onto, saying, yeah, the conference is good, even though there was, for a period of time, one team that was doing a lot of that heavy lifting.
Yeah, so, look, I think more people are concerned. Yes, is it nice to see the SEC doing well overall? Sure. But I think if you ask 9 out of 10 people, 9 times out of 10, I think more people are concerned with how their own team is doing compared to what people are saying about the rest of the league. The SEC is still a very good conference in all of the major sports. Yeah.
And would it shock anybody if they won the national championship this year with Georgia or Texas or Alabama or whoever? It gets to the point to me where you're saying, okay, things have really shifted. If we're talking about an SEC team winning a national championship in any of the major sports and saying, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. You know what I mean? That's when we get to the point of, okay, things really shifted. They still have a lot of power. They still make a ton of money. They still have a ton of talent. It's not the gradual fall off a cliff like I think some people make it out to be.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's that deep. It comes up every single year, and I feel like Feinbaum's always the one talking about it. I feel like it always comes up when the SEC doesn't get to the national championship games. The SEC's run of dominance over. It's like the same thing with Alabama whenever they would lose in the national championship under Saban, and it become this big thing of, is their dynasty over? Like you said at the beginning of this whole segment, Tyler, the SEC, I don't think any conference in general is going to do what the SEC did specifically in football. And honestly, we can group in basketball and baseball from the 2000s into the 2010s. Like, stuff like that probably isn't happening that consistently ever again. Does that mean the SEC is all of a sudden just this bad conference and it won't win anything ever again? No, obviously not. Like, the SEC is going to be just fine. But the playing field is leveled out now to where, shoot, any of these Power 4 schools in any of these sports, I mean, mainly football, they can offer a guy $1 million to come play. Like,
yeah.
All these schools have resources now. Maybe not all on the same playing field, but it evens it out for sure.
Yeah, well, and there is truth to the fact that now everybody can pay players, and that is why the talent is getting spread out a lot more. And we're not dumb or naive. We know there were plenty, most, if not all, SEC schools that were doing things under the table for decades and decades prior to this. That's how the game was played. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't deny that Ohio State and Miami and other schools like that were doing the same thing. It's just the SEC was doing a lot better. Now it's a little bit more spread out. But again, it's still not this grand valley between the SEC and the Big Ten that I think some people make it out to be. But I think it's them taking shots more at the arrogance of how the SEC's carried itself in general over years, trying to kind of hold them down a little bit. But I'm not panicked. I'm not freaking out about it. I think the SEC is just fine where they're at.
No, we shouldn't be freaking out. You shouldn't be freaking out listening live. There's no need to be concerned. I think the SEC they're doing just fine.
If anything, I think the SEC is speaking for a lot of college football fans by not wanting to expand to a 2014 playoff, which Greg Sankey is very adamant he doesn't want.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to go to 24. I would be interested, though, about 16. But, yeah, I think 12 is a pretty good number right now. It's just, is it causing major problems across the sport? I don't think so. I think what is causing problems is moving to 76 teams in the NCAA tournament in basketball. I think that's a big problem.
Yeah.
Hopefully baseball doesn't have to change anytime soon.
We'll see. And I've kind of accepted 16 is fine. I think we're going to get there, and 24 is just too much. But again, those are the two topics that kind of keep going back and forth in this offseason of college football. So again, a little over 100 days until we actually start playing games again and cannot talk about these same things in a cycle over and over and over again. Jack, we'll let you go. Let's see what we have to say about this baseball game tomorrow.
All right, see you then.
Carter Miller coming up next as he joins Chris Clark for the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling, Heating, and Plumbing as your Tuesday rolls along here on The Game.
All right, welcome in. It's the Garnet Trust Hour. Chris Clark here with Gamecock Football's Carter Miller. Garnet Trust Hour, of course, every Tuesday and Thursday, presented to you by Krantz Cooling, Heating, and Plumbing. Appreciate those guys for making this possible. Carter, appreciate you taking time, man. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, man. Really glad to have you here. First of all, let's just go ahead and talk about this because we're going to get into football and off-field stuff and all sorts of stuff today. But, you've been here since, January in Columbia. How are you just liking life in South Carolina here?
And I love it. I love South Carolina. It's I'm from Fort Worth, Texas originally, and it reminds me a lot of my hometown. So, no, I like it a lot. Great food, too.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah, no, some real good food.
Don't worry. We're going to get into food. We're definitely going to get into that.
Yeah.
But let's go back, man, to the let's actually look all the way back at the high school recruiting process, right?
Yes,
so
sir.
you're from Fort Worth.
Yes, sir.
You played high school ball, though, in Tennessee, right?
Yes, sir. So I did my first 3 years of high school in Texas. I went to All Saints for a year, my freshman year, and then I went to Aledo for 2 years. We won state my sophomore year. And then my senior season, actually in the middle of my junior season, I ended up tearing my meniscus, and then we moved to Nashville. And so I did my senior year in Nashville, and then I early enrolled into James Madison.
Okay, good deal. So when you look back at the high school recruiting process,
Yes, sir.
what do you remember about it? Did you have any, obviously James Madison, great program at that level. So
Yes, sir.
there's no, but now you're an SEC Power 4 football player.
Yep.
Did you look at it? Were you ever I think I'm a Power 4 player? How was that process for you?
Yeah, so my whole time, I knew, especially playing in Texas, I was playing ranked guys that were committed to Power 4 schools every week. And so I always knew, and I was handling my business, I was playing well, and I was like, man, I'm a Power 4 football player. I know I am, but I am a shorter offensive lineman. They're like the 6'4" guys. I'm about 6'2". So, I just got to prove myself. And so that's why I went to James Madison. I was like, it was a great program. Like you said, Coach Signetti did a great job there. And I just saw a great opportunity for me to learn and develop there and get on the field quick.
So you played, just for those listening, you played for Coach Signetti at
Yes, sir.
JMU?
Yes, sir.
I got to ask you, because I feel like so many people are fascinated by him. When you see what he's done at Indiana, are you surprised by that?
No, sir, not really. I say that because, he's been successful everywhere he's been at. And then a lot of the guys he took with him, too. So, my class was pretty much all the guys that are at Indiana now.
Yep.
And that were just getting drafted and stuff. And so, I knew those guys would be successful for sure. It's a great coaching staff, great head coach, great players with them.
Good deal. So let's look at now, fast forward. You decided to get in the transfer portal this past offseason. What went into that decision? First of all, let's look at that. What went into that decision where you this is time I can make that jump now to Power 4?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I entered the portal. So I started at James Madison for 2 years, got some good playing experience at left guard. Then I went to Louisiana Monroe, started 12 games, was an all Sun Belt guy. And then transferred to Central Florida last season, had a good year. Fortunately, I got sick towards the end of the season. I got mono, so I missed the last 3 games. But I had a really good year, and I knew that, kind of like you said, I could make the jump. And so, I just took the chance on myself. I was like, all right, I'm going to the portal, and I wanted to go play at the highest level. I grew up in the South, so I wanted to go play in the SEC. That's the highest level of college football. So
I think it's kind of crazy to think, talking to guys who were obviously recruited in high school and then they go through the transfer portal process, and it's just so different, I feel like, because it's so short. It seems like it's really fast and furious. What was your experience like just trying to navigate all that?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Definitely very fast. I kind of had it in my mind that I wanted to go play in the SEC. That was been my dream since I was a kid. And so, as soon as I got called by South Carolina, I was lit up, man. I was happy. And I knew that was my first and only visit. I knew as soon as I heard from them, they're one of the first schools I heard from in the portal, and I was just pumped. I was like, man, this is my dream. I've always been a fan of Coach Beamer. I like the relationship he has with his guys and just with the team, the culture that he instills in the team. It's a brotherhood. I've never felt this close on a team Especially, I mean, because I've been around the portal. Clearly, I've been around a bunch of schools, and this quickly, I've never felt like a part of a real team with the brotherhood. So that was one of the big things that I was just excited to get here. You know, I was a fan of Coach Beamer and his culture, and just a fan of South Carolina.
So I got to ask you this: you being from Texas and from Fort Worth specifically, growing up, were you a TCU guy? Who did you like in state, or was it anybody?
So I was actually a Bama fan growing up. My dad was a big Bama fan. He's from Alabama, so he was a big Alabama fan. But I grew up a Bama fan, but really just SEC fan in general. We used to always pull for the SEC schools.
Okay, so not even the Texas schools. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Mm.
Well, you do have the tie-in now, though, with a couple guys who actually came from Fort Worth and from TCU, and Coach Briles and Coach Clements.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about Coach Clements and then Jason Smith, who played for him at Baylor. You know, tell me about getting to know those guys, you know, off the field too, but also what you've seen on the field from them.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I mean, Coach Clem, he's very smart. You know, I've been developed more in this time that I've been at South Carolina than the rest of my college career. And so I feel like he's very technical. And I mean, you can just tell he's been around, he's coached a lot of great football players, and he knows what he's talking about. And so he's very to the point, you know, he's trying to make you better, very just say black and white, like you're going to do it this way. This is how it's going to be done. Like, this is the right way. And so, I mean, it is the right way. It works. And so, and then Coach Smooth, man, he's just a big old like ball of energy. You know, there's nobody. He's going to be running around the facility in the morning. Great day, make it a great day. It's 5:30. You're not even really awake yet. But, you know, I mean, he brings a lot of passion to it, which is very appreciated from, like, the players and, like, my perspective. Because, you know, it gets kind of draining when you're in there and it's just like, oh, okay, this is meetings. But, you know, like, he really does bring the energy. And he also sets a good standard for us, you know, a championship level standard. He really has our priorities where they need to be, and he makes sure that our focus is on the end goal, not just today. You know, we're worried about today getting better, but for the end goal, you know.
So positionally, I know you've played different positions at the college level. You're working at center here at South Carolina, which you've done before. Tell me about playing center specifically for Coach Clem and in Kendall Briles' offense, because it seems like the center is even more important in his scheme than in some other ones.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, you got to be able to recognize the defense very fast. And, like, that's one of the things I love about playing center is you are kind of the shot caller for the O-line. You know, you let everybody know what to do. You kind of get everybody in the right position on the right guys. And so I love doing that. And so in this offense, you know, you got to be fast. You got to be able to dissect the box, realize where your linebackers are, where people can blitz from, what kind of front you're going against, just all those types of things. Then you got to be able to do it very quick. And then just playing for Coach Clem, playing center for him, you know, like I said, he's very smart. And so just learning from him how he looks at a defense to dissect it, it kind of helps me learn to speed up the process, you know, because now I'm seeing things how he sees it, not how I see it. So that's really helped me a lot.
What about the tempo? Like, I know that tempo is a part of Kendall Briles' offense, and he's dedicated, like, not really dabbling in it, but like it is a feature of the offense. So did you have how is this compared to maybe some other tempo experiences that you've had and just getting used to it and all that when you got here?
Yes, sir. So last year when I was at Central Florida, we were a tempo team as well. So I wasn't too shocked by just getting into tempo shape, you know, running around, not being a big old fat old lineman, just catching my breath and stuff. You know, I was prepared for it. But I'll say this is we are just fast, so much faster than any tempo team I've been a part of. And it's very just fast, quick. Everybody knows their assignments. Everybody knows their job. It's we're coming together very well in the spring.
Another football question here before we got to take a quick timeout. I want to go to the other side of the ball because obviously you've been going against a position group that Coach Beamer shouted out a lot after spring ball, and that was this defensive tackle room for South Carolina. Just observing those guys and working out with them and going against them every day back in spring ball in April. What are your thoughts on how good that group could be?
I mean, they're a great group. You know, they're old. You got old guys that are really good, young guys that are really good. And, you know, they make me better. You know, I appreciate it because I get to go against the best D-line in the country every day. And so, like, that just sets you up. I mean, you got size, you got speed, you got finesse, you got power. Like, they're a very complete D-line room. They got everything. And they can just rotate guys in and out. And it's somebody's just as good with a whole different skill set where you may win against a big old brute. Now this guy, he's going to shimmy, make you miss, stuff like that. So, I mean, very diverse, very, very good and deep defensive line room.
All right, we're here hanging out on the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling, Heating, and Plumbing with Carter Miller, Center for Gamecock Football. Going to take a quick time out. On the other side, talk about some food since Carter got to Columbia. Be right back. All right, everybody, let's tell you about our presenting sponsor here on the Garnet Trust Hour. It's our friends over at Krantz Cooling, Heating, and Plumbing. KrantzCooling.com, K-R-A-N-T-Z, cooling with a K.com. You've heard us talk about them here on the program every single week. HVAC service, local, reliable for your home or your business. Repair, maintenance, and installation. They've been out to my home for new installations, for maintenance, for repairs. They've been out to Wes's home, too. You can trust Justin Krantz and his local family-owned business since 1983. They've been helping Midlands families and businesses with any of their HVAC needs. We're excited to say now they've added plumbing to the business. So whether you have heating needs, air quality for your indoor spaces, or plumbing needs now, 803-672-3224 or KrantzCooling.com. Give them a call today for any of your heating, cooling, plumbing needs. All right, welcome back in. It's the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling, Heating, and Plumbing. Hanging out with Carter Miller. I'm Chris Clark. Carter from Gamecock Football, of course, transferring in, working at center this year. Been here since January. And so I promised we were going to talk about some food, Carter. You said you found some good spots around here. But I'll tell you, man, one thing, anytime I've had the opportunity to go to the facility for just whatever it may be, you know, media, something like that, you're always like, man, it smells good in here. Something we hear from recruits a lot, and even from players, is like when they got here, the nutrition and the food is something else. What was that like getting here to like an SEC program and just seeing the investment in that part of it?
I mean, it's unbelievable. And I see the changes in my body. You know, I've never been able to maintain 300 pounds, and now I'm maintaining well above 300, and I've packed it on the right way. Like you said, the nutrition. I mean, I was at a program before where we had just chicken strips and old biscuits, and it wasn't it. And now I walk in there and there's salmon, there's steak, chicken, rolls, mashed potatoes, vegetables. Like, you got everything. I mean, it's awesome. You know, I mean, it really is awesome having that at your reach. And as well as Yemi, our nutritionist, he, like, all the supplements and stuff he gives you, like, those things make such a big difference. And like, coming from places where I haven't had those before to now having, I mean, any supplement you could want laid out for you right when you walk in the building. I mean, I've watched it really help my game and help my just body a lot.
Yeah, and you talked about, you know, the food being good down here. So we'll give some free shout outs to folks. What have you found that you've really liked since you've been here?
Yes, sir. Well, I'm trying not to get too far above 300, so I haven't been going too crazy. But sure. I would say Pita's downtown, it was really good. I mean, obviously you got Halls. Halls is great.
Oh, yeah.
We had Pita's downtown, some good Greek food. Let's see, man.
Yeah, Halls, yep.
The old train station, California Dreamin', is that what it's called?
Yeah.
That was pretty good. Yeah, went there. That was pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, y'all can write Carter a thank you note for giving you some free out on the air. Definitely know about Pita's. Go there a lot myself, actually, after the radio show, actually. So when you're at home, do you like doing any cooking on your own? Do you get time to do that?
I like my girl cooking. Okay. I like her cooking. Yeah, I can't cook. Yeah, I make about eggs, and that's about as far as I can go. Yeah, no, she can cook though.
Okay, that's always good. You got to hang on to her for that, then. Yeah, for sure. No doubt. So, one thing you hit on earlier, Carter, was just like the brotherhood and camaraderie you felt on this team, and we all know it's something Coach Beamer works on a lot. I have never seen a college football program that doesn't say, we're like a family, we've got culture, you know, and all those, but I feel like they try to live it out a little bit more. Like, can you go into more detail about like how they do that and just what it's like, how it's different, I guess? Just the little things, like some other programs I've been, you know, a lot of guys, especially when you're the transfer, you're the new guy coming in, people can be like kind of standoffish. It'd be like, oh, like, who are you? What are you coming in here? But like when I came here just on my visit, everybody was saying like, what's up? Everybody was welcoming, you know, all the other linemen, all the other positions, like everybody was just with open arms, and everybody really kind of puts their pride down to make a relationship with you. Like nobody's too good for anybody. Everybody's just trying to like come in here, like feeling the brotherhood. Everybody's trying to build a relationship with me, which was it's very cool. And like, I think that like correlates, helps a lot on the field, especially between linemen. You know, you got to have that type of chemistry. You got to have that type of relationship. And, you know, when you have a lot of guys transferring in, that's crucial to help speed up just that real teamwork, like real team where you can lean on each other in hard times kind of thing. Yeah, as we mentioned a couple times, you're here, Carter, on behalf of Garnet Trust. And tell us a little bit. I understand you had a cool event with Red Bull recently. Yes, sir. Yeah. So we had a chariot event. And we went out there with some of the students, and we were building these chariots to race. And ours didn't turn out too well. Ours broke, but we did that. And then we put together a little skit, like we went perform like a little baseball. The pitcher hit the batter, got into a big fight. We went perform like a little skit, and then we were throwing marshmallows in this guy's mouth from like 50 feet away. It was like the host. He's some foul on. He's got like 3.5 million on Instagram. He's famous, and we threw marshmallows from like 50 feet, and he was catching them on the chariot. So. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. All right. Good stuff, man. So one thing that just dawned on me is thinking about the schedule that you guys are going to play this year. you actually are going to get a chance to play your childhood team, Alabama.
Yes, sir.
Are you looking forward to that? What are your thoughts?
Yes, sir. I'm super excited. You know, it's really cool. You know, something as a little kid, the stadium and just teams that I was growing up watching play, and I was like, man, like that's been my dream, like you said, since a kid. You know, so it's amazing. You know, it's such a blessing, and I'm just ready to make the most of the opportunity.
Game 1, you guys are going to be in Columbia at Williams-Brice Stadium.
Yes,
will that be the biggest crowd you've played in front of, or?
I've played at a night game in Texas. It was Arch Manning's first start, so that place was sold out. So
sure.
I've played and then I played at Auburn before, so I've probably played about similar size crowds, but not as rowdy as South Carolina is.
For sure, man. Yeah. So when you kind of look back on the spring and the progress that you made individually and that you guys made as a team, you know, what are your thoughts on that progress offensively, as an offensive line, as an offense, and then for you, you know, how did you progress the most, and then where do you see things going? What are your biggest priorities this offseason?
So from the team perspective, I think we really picked up the offense very quickly and were able to execute it very quickly at a high level. Like that offense, I mean, it takes a lot more time than defense just because you got to have 11 guys all working towards one play versus like defense, you know, somebody can just make a standout play and everybody looks good. But I mean, it's not the same for offense. Everybody has to do their job. And so compared to a lot of places I've been at before, we just picked it up so quickly here. Like, so quickly we were able to really compete with the defense. You know, other places I've been at, sometimes the defense just dominates spring because offense is trying to put all the pieces together, but we were able to really just compete. And, you know, that's where you get better offensively and defensively, is we were just able to compete quickly. So I'll say that's the biggest thing that stood out, is how fast we were able to pick everything up, put the pieces together, and play like we've been playing together for years. You know, it didn't look like, oh, hey, there's a whole new team this year, You know, it looked like we've been playing ball together for a long time. And then personally, you know, I think I improved a lot just playing fast, playing in that Clem and Browse offense. And, you know, I think I got a lot better at my pass pro footwork and my pass pro fundamentals, and just got better at seeing defenses and picking things out. So I think that's where I took the most steps at this spring.
When you think about the run game, obviously that's a big priority this year to improve. And I know you weren't here last year, but it's something that Coach Beamer's talked about, and Coach Clem, Coach Browse, the fan base. What do you think goes into having, from an O-line perspective, a strong run game, as far as you guys can control that part of it? What are the keys to that, you think?
You know, I can tell you, you know, like there's technique and there's pad level and hand placement, hat placement, all this and that. But at the end of the day, you got to want it more than the guy across from you. And so you and your other 4 O linemen, your 5 O linemen, got to want it more than the 4 D linemen in front of you. And so, like, that's at the end of the day, is really working on and developing that mentality of just wanting it more. Hey, we're going to be more physical than you, whether you like it or not. Like, regardless of anything else, I'm going to play harder than you are. And I think that's how you have success in the run game. I mean, obviously, there's still a technique and everything like that. We got to continue to develop those things. But I think the most important thing is the run game is to have that mentality, and then just to play harder. Like, you just have to play more physical, harder, and just hit. I mean, hit them.
Sure, people like hearing that. So last thing before I let you run, I do have to ask you about this, because I think it's probably pretty different here at South Carolina too. Coach Day, Coach Morton, the workouts, they do some unorthodox things, I guess you could say. But what was that transition like, and what have you thought of the off-season program and just getting your body ready?
I mean, it was definitely shocking at first, those first couple of weeks. I was like, man, 5 days a week, and it's just work. But I mean, it was really good. I've seen, like I was talking about earlier, like with the nutrition, you know, the other half that helps my body change is the working out aspect. And, you know, I think I'm the best athlete I've been in my career, which is good. And I think I've just developed in this spring the way that I needed to in that strength program and conditioning program. You know, I think I got better all around. But it's definitely very unorthodox, very different from some things I've done before. But I think it helps prepare your body for football, because football isn't just like, oh, we're going to hang clean and we're going to squat super heavy. Like, football is a lot of different movements. You got to be flexible, and you got to be strong in flexible positions. You got to be explosive. And so I think we work on a lot of those things. I've seen a big growth in that this offseason.
Good stuff, man. All right, that's Carter Miller, Center for Gamecock Football. Carter, appreciate you taking the time, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, Chris Clark here, Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling, Heating, and Plumbing. We'll be right back on the other side.
All right, welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling, Heating, and Plumbing. It's our Ed and Chris Clark wrapping up the hour here on your Tuesday on the Game. You just finished listening to Chris's conversation with Carter Miller, transfer offensive lineman from the University of Central Florida. Have you ever been called sir that many times in a 20-minute stretch before?
Probably not, and very uncomfortable. Makes me feel old, which I am getting older. Gaslighting myself. And I said George Carlin had a great bit about that.
Sure.
Start saying I'm getting older. Not old, older.
Older.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, very polite. Very good manners.
It was. I don't like. Yeah. I try to tell. I mean, I wasn't going to correct him on air, but I'm like, please don't call me sir. You know.
Yeah.
No.
We I did a job shadow for a high schooler whose mom my wife works with. And he came in, he hung out one of the days we were over at Pro Swing a couple months ago. And, you know, I'd never met the kid before. So he comes in and we're introducing ourselves or whatever. And he asked me, he's like, do I have to call you sir? I'm like, please don't. Don't do that.
Do I have to call you sir?
Do I have to call you sir? I said, please do not do that.
Yeah.
You don't have to. And he didn't. We were cool. But I've never been asked that question before. Again, I'm almost 30. So I guess it was coming at some point. But I was like, yeah, I don't need that. I'm okay.
It'll get worse.
It's good that people are polite. And
yes,
Carter Miller, very polite.
Very polite and good dude. And, you know, here's like the O-line rebuild has been talked about plenty.
No kidding.
I would love to have a football season where we're not talking about the O-line constantly.
Well, I've been here 4 years and we haven't had one yet.
That's right. So it will continue. Even 2024, like really good season. And we're still sitting there saying, oh, we're giving up a lot of sacks, you know, like
you just had a freakazoid at quarterback that could get out of some of them.
And top 25 run game.
Yep.
You know, which the O-line measures into that too, but Sellers and the guy named Rocket Sanders, you know, they certainly help. So, yeah, we would love to not. I mean, I remember the 2023 season. It was every week we're talking about the O-line. I'd like to talk about it from the standpoint of, hey, they're playing better. Like, that would be cool. And I think Carter Miller's addition to the team, even recognizing that we're talking about the O-line a lot, until further notice, that's just the way it's going to be. Maybe a little bit under the radar. He didn't transfer from, you know, since he brought up his childhood fandom of Alabama, he didn't transfer from Bama. He wasn't a former 5-star, right? But there were a lot of problems on the O-line last year, as we know, that Shane Beamer has set out to fix. New scheme, new O-line coach. Probably four of the 5 starters on the O-line this season are going to be transfers.
Right.
So there's a lot of change to try to fix it on all levels, on all fronts. But, you know, I think there's some – you never know until you get to the games. I think there's some confidence already that, like, hey, we'll be better at center. You know, we know penalties were a big thing last year, just to be frank. And so you're getting a guy in Carter that's played a lot of ball. He's played center. He's been to different schools. If you listen to him, you hear the mentality, you know, that he brings. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He brought that up during the recruiting process. Hey, I'm not a 6'5", you know, guy, but he feels like he's in good shape. You know, one thing I thought was interesting, he said, I feel more developed since I've been here since January, so you know, 5 months, than my entire college career. So, and just stepping up to the SEC and being able to, what potential that you have to reach as a player, being able to step into an SEC program where he's never been before, hadn't been on that level yet, and being able to unlock some of that potential from a nutrition, a weight room, a coaching standpoint. You know, having someone in the middle there that can give you a little bit more solid play, you know, I think will be significant for the offense.
You know, I think it's interesting that you mentioned, he didn't come from Alabama or Texas or something along those lines. He did play for Curt Cignetti. Now, that was back at James Madison, and I guess we're still new into the Cignetti era, but I feel like that's something we're going to bring up more in the years going forward. It's like, hey, Cignetti got that guy out of high school. Cignetti saw something in that guy. Like, I think that's kind of going to be one of the newer stamps of approval of like, oh, that guy played for Saban. Well, that guy played for Cignetti. Like, I do think there's some validity to like, hey, Cignetti saw him out of high school and said, that's my center. I want that guy. So, you know, and obviously he didn't go along with Cignetti to Indiana or anything along those lines, but he did get evaluated by him, and he thought he was good enough to play on those very good JMU teams a couple years ago.
And a lot of those JMU guys were the stars of the squad for Indiana this past year. D'Angelo Pons at corner, Elijah Surratt, wide receiver, and others, And so, I thought it was cool to, Carter, I said, are you surprised by what Sig has done at Indiana? No, not really. So that's one thing we know. I mean, the guy, Signetti's a really good talent evaluator, and you're right. He thought that this guy, Carter Miller, was a good player, and he's done some good things at the college level. Has a lot of experience, which I think matters. Getting older, getting more experienced, finding the right traits for those guys is key. So he's kind of got a hold on that. I think him and Nolan Hay have been battling, but Carter's the guy that's been thought of as this is probably your starter unless something changes, and he's kind of kept that all throughout the spring and into the summer.
For sure. Can't wait to see him in action coming up later on this year. 109 days away, by the way, from kickoff if you're keeping count. We'll come back. We'll get back into baseball as maybe the final day of the season for South Carolina out in Hoover. That's coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on the way on your Tuesday on the Game. 11 o'clock on your Tuesday morning. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, along with you here on the game. Maybe the last day for Gamecock baseball. Season maybe finally coming to an end today. 5:30's first pitch against Tennessee out at Hoover. That's assuming the first two games don't run long. There's not a weather delay, though. I think the weather's going to be okay. It's historic at Hoover every year. One day gets thrown off to where you're having to play a game until like 2 a.m. the next day, or you have to kick an entire game from Thursday to Friday. It's just par for the course. Now, hopefully Carolina doesn't have to deal with that, but that's kind of the norm at some point during the week. That's going to happen.
First pitch, 11:45 p.m.
Hey, it happens, man, and you just hope your team's not a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it will, at some point in the near future, it's going to be just complete shift to full, like most people are in off-season mode, full shift.
Sure.
Got two pieces on Gamecock Central right now about the coaching search, So that's where we're at. That's all I can say about it.
Yeah,
that's where we're at in our minds.
I mean, we had Eric Kane of VolQuest on in the 9 o'clock hour, and we talked a little bit about things from the Tennessee perspective, where they stand, obviously what's going on with them and all that kind of stuff. But for Carolina, and I forgot to ask Jack, who's out there and who's recovering everything, if he even saw Carolina fans out there, right? Like, would anybody make the trip unless you just live in the Hoover area? Like, I don't think anybody's making the 5-hour trek from here to there to watch what might be a one and done for a team that has effectively been done with the season for about 2.5, 3 weeks now.
Yeah, I did respect your commitment to the bit to break down the game with a Tennessee guest. I mean, that is some commit. Are you still going to do your play-by-play, right? Like,
I'll do it.
Jot it down.
For one final game.
You know they have a box score that'll track that all completely for you.
I remember it better when I write it down.
I was just reading something yesterday about when you write things. That's
an old teacher thing.
Yeah.
If you write
and
these notes,
I also individually write out all the stats for all players every game that I have on a sheet that I can go back and reference quickly throughout the entire season.
See, my handwriting's not good enough to do that. It's just.
Well, I type it.
It's just okay.
Yeah, I type it.
It's scribble. So I think we're definitely at the good thing about there being an interim coach is that you can actually talk about all this. What?
I'm sorry. Interim.
Oh,
it was like the Frank Martin.
Yeah. Okay. The good thing about it is, some people would be like, this guy hasn't been let go yet. It's in bad taste to go ahead and be talking about who South Carolina should have. Sometimes at the end of the year, everybody kind of knows the coach is going to get let go, but it hasn't happened yet. No, Tyler?
No, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I was waiting on his approval of what I was saying, but he kind of looked at me like I was stupid. So, I think sometimes, like, especially, like, you don't want to be sitting there writing articles about, like, hey, here's why Kevin Schnall would make sense for this job if Palmineri was still the coach. But because you already fired him, you said, hey, Monty Lee's the coach, but it is an interim capacity. It does at least allow everybody to go ahead and start, like, really looking ahead and diving into who some of these candidates may be. So, I think as far as SEC tournament, you're going to have probably family, girlfriends make the trip. Other than that, I don't think it's going to be a super well-attended thing for South Carolina, which, I think you completely understand. Most people, as we've said many, many times now, already just focused on the future and what that's going to look like for South Carolina.
That is a good point that you bring up, because I go back to 2 years ago when Carolina was heading out to the Raleigh Regional with two seed, I think they were. Yes. And we kind of had a good idea, okay, if they don't make it out of this, that's probably it for Kingston. In his post-game presser after they got eliminated on that Sunday, kind of sense it a little bit. And then that morning, I think right as our show was beginning, he got fired, and we were obviously, head first into a coaching search at that point in time. But there was still that kind of, okay, maybe, maybe not, going to the weekend where we're now. And again, really for the past couple of weeks, you've known, okay, Miley had his chance. It hasn't worked out. Again, we love the guy as a person, but it's just not going to be somebody that you hang on to as the head coach here at South Carolina going forward, which has allowed us to kind of shift that saying, okay, well, here's the candidates, here's who we're looking at, here's who we like, and here's who we hope they end up hiring. So now as you go through possibly today being the last game, that then takes the other gear of, okay, now the season's over, and now how long do we have to wait until that guy is hired? And again, when you're talking about coaches being in the mix that could be making deep postseason runs, it could still be a couple more weeks.
Yeah, it could. It's getting more real in terms of the timing of all this and talking about candidates. There's information starting to trickle out about some of the candidates, but I also think, like, to back up, we still got to see which direction Jeremiah Donati takes on this thing. It's going to be his hire, and so what is he thinking? And I think there's some things we have a really good idea on. We do know, I think pretty confidently, some of the people that will be / are in the mix for the job. Yes, Kevin Schnall from Coastal, Fitzgerald from Kansas, some others who are going to be in postseason play. And so there's going to be some waiting that has to take place with that, depending on how far they go. Does Jeremiah Donati have some other, wild cards up his sleeve? Yeah, we're probably never going to find out. Here is every single coach that was ever on the radar for this job. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're going to have, I think, a good idea eventually of who were the finalists, like who is the leading guy as that gets closer. But, this thing is not at the end yet. And so people are passing it, on social media. This is one of the reasons why I get irritated when people, I can get all my news on social media. You got to be really careful with that because Kevin Schnall has already agreed to a deal here, according to social media, which is, of course, not true.
And Chance Miller's at Virginia Tech.
He's there right now.
I mean, the fact of it is that I think if you look back, June 11th was when we're just talking about like calendar dates. Palmineri was hired at South Carolina. June 30th, according to this search, was when Mark Kingston was hired. So, I think that gives you a little just idea of typically when these things are going to take place. You probably are looking at some point, maybe middle of next month. Obviously, there's going to be different variables every single time, but that gives you a broad overview. And, yeah, man, the fact that there were people that legitimately thought Coastal was going to announce that Kevin Schnall was leaving his post with the postseason still to be played is mind-numbing to me.
He's just going to put his 2-week notice.
Yeah, just put it in right now. Like, the rest of this season doesn't matter. I'm just going to go ahead and announce that I'm going to South Carolina. And then people automatically were like, well, no. This must mean Chance Miller has accepted the Virginia Tech job because what else could it be? Couldn't be that this guy's just making stuff up for Twitter clout. But anyway, I think here's what we do know. Kevin Schnall is definitely on the list for South Carolina and very well could be the next hire. Far, far, far too early to say like it is going to be him or that it has reached that point at all. Definitely in the mix. I think you can look at Dan Fitzgerald at Kansas and say almost surely in the mix. Like those are the two names that have just been mentioned the most, kind of floating around the most. But, yeah, there are other names. And here's the thing. It still has to play out, right? Like I look at it right now a little bit like kind of like prediction markets, honestly, Vegas gambling odds. The odds may be on someone right now, but that doesn't mean that's exactly how it is going to end up playing out. So I think you could put the odds on those two coaches right now as being the chances are it probably ends up being maybe one of those two guys. But the fact of the matter is it still has to play out. There's going to be conversations. There may be other coaches who have their people still reach out to Donati and say, hey, I want to be in the mix for this. And they could completely change the dynamics of where things are.
Yeah, it seems like, some of the things we know or that we're pretty confident in, like it does seem much more likely than not that Donati hires a sitting head coach from somewhere. That seems most likely. Is it a lock? No, I don't think so. Are those guys that you just talked about, Wes, that we've been talking about, Coastal, Kansas, are they in the mix? Yeah, absolutely. But these things can shift. I think back to, the Beamer football search. First day or two of that thing, people are bringing up Hugh Freeze. He was, I don't want to say immediately, almost immediately ruled out behind the scenes, and some people continued talking about him after that point. Billy Napier, Shane Beamer, they came up early, and they stayed in it throughout. Those were really the last two guys standing in that search. And up until then, some people were saying, it's going to be Billy Napier. He's the top guy. And really, he wasn't. It was Beamer. At one point kind of ascended, and really he just stayed there up until the end. So there's a lot of, early in these things and even kind of at different points of coaching searches, and I'm just going off of, my experience covering them, there's a lot of things that get out there, and some of them are absolutely true. Some of them have some truth to them, and you have to kind of parse those things and go through them and determine what's what.
A little bit of history made already this morning, by the way. Of course, we know the automatic ball strike system is going to be used in the SEC tournament this week. We had our first official ABS challenge in college baseball history, as on the 9th pitch of the game, Ole Miss's catcher challenged a ball that was to the outside. It was ruled in favor of the umpire. It was the correct call. But we have our first ABS challenge in the book. Carolina will get that opportunity to at least try this later on today in one game if they don't advance past today.
I feel like that would be kind of fun if you're the catcher, having all the power. Now, do they have the same rules, Tyler, as MLB?
Yes. Effectively, yes.
So pitchers can challenge as well?
Yes, it's a tap on the head or the tap on the helmet. In fact, and Jack retweeted this, they have signs up, at least in the press box, if not all the way around the Hoover Met, of like how this works. And they have, okay, if you're a catcher, batter, or pitcher, how you tap, how quickly you have to do it, how it works, what the strike zone is, and all that kind of stuff. So everybody's learning as this week goes along, but watching the replay of this, it looks exactly like it does in Major League Baseball. You challenge, they flash up the graphic, it's either right or wrong, and you keep on rolling.
Did you see the thing where the umpire, the call got changed, and the umpire just ignored it?
No, when did that happen?
I think this was last night or the night before. So I'll be very curious to see how there's just a little bit of a different dynamic with college kids and the umpires. Like, how is there, I feel like there's a little bit, weirdly enough, some respect. Like, the players at the MLB level and the umpires have, for the most part, handled this pretty well. Like, I've even seen players, if they challenge a call and the umpire ends up being right, they'll kind of smirk and be like, good call, or the umpire will, kind of nod, like, yeah, good challenge or whatever. Like, it's kind of not in fun, but it's been handled professionally for the most part. Like, it hasn't been like I'm showing you up by getting the computer to tell you you're wrong type thing.
Yeah, do we get somebody that if there's like an overturn, if it's full count, ball, it gets called a strike, the batter challenges it, and then it gets overturned to a ball, and he walks first. I told you so. Is he showing up the umpire at that point? Like, that's where we could get into some interesting situations.
You get tossed for what is now a right call, just putting it in their face, basically.
Do you bat flip a right call?
I mean, I would not walk. I would not put anything past.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
College baseball players.
Yeah, we'll see. But, again, that in effect this week. And, again, we expect it to likely go full-time next year as they're testing it out this week, all week long out there in Hoover. We'll talk some football coming up next. Steve Spurrier officially inducted into the South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame last night. We'll discuss it coming up on the other side. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Tuesday on the Game.
All right, guys, let me tell you about our awesome friends over at Integrated Media. So, boys, I'm riding over today, and what do I see? Chris, What is that right there?
Oh, the integrated media van.
In the wild. Saw it over on, I guess, kind of Gurners Ferry, turning into Divine Street. And I understand, I've got inside information here, that was Philip on the way to his next service call. And guess what? You can have Philip and the integrated media team come out to your house as well. 803-948-8327, integratedmediainc.com. And as it says on the van, theater service, audio service, automation, security. That could be as simple as upgrading the Wi-Fi and, having hardwired internet throughout your home. That could be going all in on a home theater system. If you want integrated media and Philip to come out to your house and fix those things up, hit them up today, 803-948-8327.
It is a little bit different. First thing I always say about South Carolina, thanks to Mike McGee, the athletic director, who hired me here when I was actually 60 years old. And I won my first game at age 60. So I don't know if anybody has been the winningest coach in school history after 60, but Mike McGee gave me that opportunity. So always thankful for him. My wife and kids, we always thoroughly enjoyed Columbia, University of South Carolina. We had wonderful players and coaches, and most all games were a lot of fun. We had some heartbreak here and there, but we set some records that some people say may not be broken in our lifetime. We'll have to wait and see.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you. That, of course, the voice of Steve Spurrier, him speaking to Fox Carolina last night ahead of his induction into the South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame. I saw some of the clips from his speech last night, and he seemed to be in full Spurrier form, taking shots at Dabo and obviously things like that. And again, he deserves all the honors that you can possibly give him for what he did his time here at South Carolina, and another one last night going into the state's Athletic Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I would say good-natured ribs at Dabo.
Some ribbing, yes.
It was it was kind of funny. He like put his hand over his like above his eyes, like he was searching out into the crowd looking for Dabo, just so Dabo would know he was goofing off, and then turned around and like paid a legitimate compliment to Dabo, talking about how he's won more conference titles than anybody and won a couple of national titles, and you know, he did pretty well for himself. Then he drops I don't know how we beat him 5 straight years, though, which, you know, at the time, insane. So, yeah, awesome to see Spurrier get added to another. I mean, how many Hall of Fames is he in? It's got to be all of them, I think. So, pretty good for him, man, though. And just to see him back, to see some of his other, you know, former coaches were there as well, pretty awesome and obviously well-deserved. And he even gave a little shout-out in the media, I guess, press conference thing they had before about his upcoming book that Brent and Kev have put so much time into.
Yeah, looking forward to that. We talked to Kevin about it the other day, so it's going to be awesome. August release date, I think. You can go pre-order it now. Amazon, USC Press, or ask Kev if you want to get it. Go hit
He'll just hand you a book.
Hand it to you. Yes. Probably not for free.
Probably not for free.
If you ask nicely, maybe. Yeah, I was thinking, I don't know why I always go back to this, but I was thinking about Spurrier's tenure, kind of watching and listening to some of that last night. And I always think about his first game. You know, there were a lot of people that, and I wasn't, Wes, I don't know if you were not as online at that time paying attention. It was a little bit before my time. But there was a lot of talk, like people had gotten wind, Steve Spurrier might be the next head coach. And some people just didn't believe it, just straight up no. Even, and not just outsiders, like people here, they're like, Steve Spurrier is not coming here to be the next head coach. That would be unbelievable. And it happened. You know, right timing, right guy, AD, and Mike McGee, who was willing to go try to make that happen. And I remember his first game, I was there, 2005. Starts out very first drive against UCF, and they had just gotten a first down, so they're right at about midfield, and he throws the classic post route, probably called Mills, Wes. Blake Mitchell to Noah Whiteside, 49 yards for a touchdown. Carolina's up 7-0 with about 2 minutes and 15 seconds off the clock, and you could tell in the stadium people were like, it was like, you know, people get excited anytime there's a touchdown in Williams-Brice Stadium. But people were like, this is our new normal. We're going to start scoring 50 points a game. It's going to be the fun and gun. And, of course, Carolina eked out a 9-point win. The rest of the game didn't exactly go like that, even though Blake Mitchell had 330 passing yards.
And that was when UCF was still FCS at that point in time.
Were they? Okay.
Not FCS. They were they Conference USA back then?
It might have been Conference USA at that time.
So they weren't on the level they are now.
That's right. And, you know, obviously there were a lot of firsts early in the Spurrier tenure, but it didn't get rolling like he got it rolling until later. You know, 2010, you make the SEC title game, then the 33-6 run, the 5, you know, wins in a row over Clemson that Wes referenced there. But it was just like, it was such a hopeful time, that first game. And it took some time, and there was some, I mean, Spurrier mentioned some heartbreak. There was some of that early. There was some of that later in the tenure, even during those great team runs, you know, a game here or there that prevented you from really doing something even bigger, getting back to Atlanta, getting into the national title game potentially. Those teams were, frankly, really close. A few of them were. But that I always think about that first game and just like the hope that it brought by having Steve Spurrier as your coach.
Yeah, and we've talked about this a lot. And again, it's 20 years ago when he came in, so times have changed a lot in college football. But those first couple of years, you had the 8-win season in 2006, but 6-6, 7-6, 7-6. So it took a few years for things to really hit the ground when he won the East in 2010. Then obviously followed that up with the 11-win seasons, and we're in such a kind of instant gratification era of college football now, which is way different than when he came in here to Carolina. But I think a lot of people would look at, those first 4 or 5 years saying, he's not getting the job done. Get him out of there. If we were talking about this in today's terms, but back then people were more patient. Carolina was a program that obviously had not really had a ton of success before, where people were patient enough to allow it to run its course. And obviously they ended up having great success there towards the very end.
Well, you didn't have the portal for one thing. So you didn't have this expectation of just, hey, bring in all these, new veteran players that have done it somewhere else and win right away. And, you also, I think part of it was you go back. It really wasn't. The funny thing is you did have, I distinctly remember sitting there. This would have been like 2009. And I remember, I want to say, I remember reading something. I want to say it was actually from the student newspaper. And it was basically saying, I don't remember the details, obviously, like, hey, if this is going to be what it's going to be with Steve Spurrier, it's time for South Carolina to look elsewhere. And, again, 2009, those who know their Gamecock history know that if you had – not that anybody in the administration was thinking about making a move, but if you had made a move, or if you had run Spurrier off, or Spurrier had said, nah, I'm out, you would have missed out on the best run in South Carolina history. But there were people, 2008, 2009 or so, that were seriously, starting to talk like that. And so early on, though, before you kind of got to that point where it was like, are they going to kind of be a 500 or so team every year? The reason there was so much excitement about it was that South Carolina had started to beat the teams that they really used to never beat before. Like, to me, that is what brought that is what Spurrier brought to this program more than anything. Is comes in 2005, you beat Florida for the first time since I think the 30s. You beat Tennessee in Knoxville on a last-second field goal, and 2005, you lose to Clemson, but a tight football game. So then you go to 2006, you lose to Florida, but tight football game.
Jarvis Moss.
You beat Clemson up there. You go to a bowl game. You win the bowl game. Let's see, 2006, I'm trying to think of those other games. What happened in the Tennessee game? I don't think they beat Tennessee that year.
Lost that one by 7.
Yeah, Georgia lost to Georgia 2006, but you beat Georgia 2007. Like, you were beating teams that you just were not used to necessarily beating.
And that was the number 2 Auburn, the clapping game.
Yes. Yep.
After the 7-point loss.
Number 2 Auburn comes in. South Carolina goes down early, battles back, really just fights their tails off, but loses the game and got a standing ovation. And Spurrier said no. He said, we don't give standing ovations for L's, basically. And so just completely changed the entire mindset. And then ultimately it eventually turned into, once you started getting all those guys from in-state, Lattimore, Alshon, Gilmore, Devontae Holloman, DJ Swearinger, bringing in Garcia and Connor Shaw at quarterback from out of state, that's when everything really started to take off.
I want to expand on this a little bit more because I'm glad you brought up the thing about, not standing for just being, getting a standing ovation in a game that you lost. I want to expand on that a little bit more on the other side as we'll continue to talk about Steve Spurrier as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along on your Tuesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris, along with you here on your Tuesday on the Game, talking Steve Spurrier, who last night went to the South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame, one of a billion Hall of Fames he's been in at this point. But at the end of that last segment, we're kind of talking about Spurrier and changing the perception of this fan base and this program in terms of football, back 20 years ago. And, of course, a couple weeks ago, we had Kevin Miller on from Gamecock Central to preview his book, The Spurrier Effect, How One Coach Transformed Gamecock Football, which is going to come out on August the 18th. And on Gamecock Central, you can still go back and find it. There's a couple of pieces of the book that he allows you to read for free on the article that gives you an insight into what the entire thing's going to be. And one of them was talking about how what he deemed first orders of business, which he was talking about tearing down the beat Clemson signs, right? Because all through the facility, beat Clemson this, beat Clemson that. And Spurrier's message was, hey, we need to try and beat everyone, not just Clemson. I think that kind of sends the wrong message. And, it's interesting because, again, this is 20 years ago where Gamecock football had not accomplished things that they would with Spurrier was here. And Spurrier having the resume that he had as being a national champion and being a guy that was the top of college football for so long at Florida, would you say people were more accepting of that because of who he was, as opposed to, like, let's say they hired Les Miles, who his first year at LSU was in 2005 too. If he came in without the same kind of resume or accomplishments as Spurrier and tried to do the same thing, may not have been received as well. You know what I mean?
I think you're assuming that was received well. I think now I don't know if this was how. It was a very different time. I don't know if this was like how the rest of Gamecock Nation felt, but at the time, I feel like this was an online argument about, well, man, we want to beat Clemson. Why is he de-emphasizing Clemson? Like, there are people that genuinely would be okay. Not really, but they would say they'd be okay if you lost every other game as long as you beat Clemson. And but that was the mindset Spurrier wanted to just completely get rid of. His thought was, if you are a good football team and there's a little bit, I think these two guys have completely different approaches, but there is a little bit of Saban in there in terms of this is saying it a different way. But what he was trying to say is we want to focus on the process. If you create a good football team, then in turn you're going to be able to beat the Clemsons, the Floridas, the Georgias, the Tennessees, because you're good, not because you thought about them every day or hated them the most. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Let's be honest. Having a Clemson countdown clock or a hate Clemson thing up, it's a little bit performative just to your fan base, right? Like, nobody's sitting there, let me get this extra rep in the weight room because of I hate orange. Like, college athletes don't really think like that. So, I think it was just Spurrier saying, why are we spending so much energy on something that doesn't actually matter? If we spend that energy on being a better football team, then that result is going to come. But I do think there are people that push back on this and are a little bit upset about it.
Well, I think, too, it's how are you emphasizing the game? Are you emphasizing the things that matter, that set you up for success to go win that game and others? And, very simply, where did that get you historically? We hate Clemson. We're going to go beat Clemson. We'll go back and check the records. Like, it wasn't that good. And Spurrier de-emphasized it. He didn't de-emphasize the game. He just brought it back to every game's important. And then he had more success than anybody's had in a long time, or ever, really, during that streak against Clemson. Why did they win? They're better. Recruit good players, coach them well. Like, that's what, and those are good Clemson teams, too. They weren't the 2016 Clemson team that won the first national championship there, or won, the first national championship in a long time there. But that's what it came down to. The South Carolina staff that was here during Clemson's big-time run, where they were in the playoff all the time, winning titles, they didn't like Clemson. Neither did the players. What did that get them? And so it's more about what's happening in your program to set yourself up for success to go win that game, as opposed to a countdown clock or something you're posting on social media. I remember was it after the 22 or 24 game? Dabo made the secretaries and everybody after Carolina went up to Death Valley and beat them, and he was playing the game on a loop and making the secretaries watch the film and all that stuff. And yeah, they won the next year. That's not why. They were just they're better on that day, And so some of it is performative. I agree with you, Wes. I don't think it's about. I think Spurrier just came in and said, let's run a program, let's set ourselves up for success. And then the proof is in the pudding with what they did.
So in his first 4 years here, they lost 3 out of 4 to Clemson. Again, this coming off the tails of saying, hey, take down the beat Clemson signs. How is that received? Like, you're saying we're not focusing on beating Clemson, and now you're not beating Clemson, but once in your first 4 years. How did that go over?
About like you think?
Yeah. Well, we're not emphasizing it anymore. So now we're, all the results are the exact same. Maybe we should put them back in. But I mean, you brought up a good point, Wes. Those were very close games. That first one. No, it was the 2007 game was super close too. Clemson won, I think, on a walk-off field goal in Columbia, and Carolina's got a chance to go down there. And of all people, this is not the reason they lost. Sidney Rice dropped a pass. Mm-hmm. Of all people.
Because he didn't hate Clemson enough.
Yeah. Well, it probably wasn't like a one-hander that he had to snag in the air. It was like a slant pass from what I recall.
That honestly, I think, is the only pass he dropped his entire career.
It had to be. I couldn't find that stat, but I do not remember any other ones.
Yeah, I vaguely remember, or no, not vaguely. I specifically remember thinking Sidney, if Sidney drops a pass, then
it's not your day.
I was like, I've never seen him drop a pass. He might have had the most sure hands of any receiver in the current to like that era, basically.
Yeah, I mean, one of the games was it that one or a different one? One of the games was 13-9. One of them was like 23-21. Even the game, talked about the 2006 game. Clemson's lining up for a pretty short field goal to tie it, pulls it,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go on that run. So, yeah, there was definitely talk about, de-emphasize, especially like you said, Tyler, in the early days where you're not getting the results, and then you start getting the results, and people are like, "Oh, okay,
he's right."
However you're doing it. Fine.
I knew that was the right call all along. Hindsight's 2020.
And Spurrier would still, like he does with just about everybody, he would throw his jabs in there and things like that. And then Dabo has his rant in the middle of it. That also did not help them beat South Carolina. That he's calling, USC's and Southern Cal, all that. That didn't help them beat Carolina.
Sure.
It's just kind of part of it, performative stuff.
Yeah, you're very right. And look, we can sit here and talk Spurrier all day. I will give you a homework assignment for tomorrow, though. Think about those great Spurrier teams, those 11-win teams. Which one of them would have performed the best in a college football playoff?
Oh, I already know.
We're going to discuss that tomorrow. So, and think about the teams they would be playing as well, not just the team itself, who they would line up with and match up with in a hypothetical expanded playoff. We'll dive into that a little bit tomorrow, so think about that tonight while you can. We'll come back, we'll wrap up the hour. The latest on the Brendan Sorsby situation, things getting a little bit weird with this one. We'll discuss that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Tuesday on the Game. right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyrus Chris along with you, wrapping up the hour here on your Tuesday on the game. The Brennan Sorsby situation at Texas Tech is one of the bigger headlines this college football offseason, and we keep getting new layers seemingly every couple weeks, including yesterday when Brennan Sorsby launched a lawsuit against the NCAA, and later on in the day, Texas Tech did deem him or ruled him ineligible for the upcoming season. Sorsby's camp is attempting to get a preliminary injunction that would allow him to play temporarily for Texas Tech this upcoming year, or at least figure out where things stand so he can declare for the NFL supplemental draft by the deadline of June 22nd if he's not going to be allowed to play in this upcoming season. And this is where things get interesting because they are very much going down the route of, hey, he's got a serious gambling addiction / mental health issue that he couldn't have stopped himself from doing this. And their defense is he was betting on Turkish basketball, Romanian soccer games, obscure tennis matches, the Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest. Like, this guy couldn't stop himself from gambling, and that is the area they're trying to use against the NCAA as to why they shouldn't rule him ineligible for the upcoming season.
Well, I mean, that's a very, very slippery slope of an argument. Like, I don't know in any, like certainly in criminal court, I just couldn't help myself. It is not, and I'm not saying gambling addiction isn't real. I'm sure it is. Like, I've said this, even just dabbling in like all the different stuff they have now, like Prize Picks and all, like, you can see why somebody would be like, man, this is fun.
Sure.
This adds a different element to it. There's even a reason why people love fantasy football. You know, not that it's necessarily tied to gambling the way every bet you make would be, but it makes you care more about the games you would just otherwise be watching very, very casually. And so I get that aspect, but at no point ever just in society have you been able to be like, yeah, sorry, I just couldn't help myself. That's really not a defense. Now, we're obviously not talking about him trying to avoid jail time here. We're talking about him trying to get himself eligible to play this season. And a lot of it is probably going to come down to the judge who's involved in this, I think. And what does that look like? I mean, according to this reporting from On3, he is requesting that a judge grant an injunction so he can play the 2026 season. I feel like I've seen the word injunction with college athletics more in the last few years than I've ever heard before. The filing states that he suffers from a, quote, clinically diagnosed gambling disorder, which is a mental health condition. The NCAA has weaponized his condition to shore up a facade of competitive integrity while simultaneously profiting from the very gambling ecosystem it polices. So this, I mean, on the surface, it sounds absurd. But the lawyer is kind of giving us his playbook, his blueprint with that next sentence. I mean, there was literally an article from a national publication that was written about the story of him, you know, being ruled ineligible. And then it had the Heisman odds listed at the bottom of the article.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't even watch ESPN, which used to shy away from this stuff, has their own gambling entity now.
Yeah. And that's the argument. I mean, Andy Staples also of On3 has a great piece on this on their front page right now. And
is it brought to you by BetMGM?
It might be.
The show probably is. The show is.
Yeah. And but you know, the NCAA, I mean, it does, like, even if you reject the argument, it doesn't even matter if we reject it or say we agree with it. Depends on what the judge says, right? Which we'll get into, but it's basically, hey, the schools and the governing body have these business relationships with these gambling entities that's exacerbating this problem. You know, so you're right, Wes. It does show the playbook. Here's the interesting thing. Now, we already have the obligatory photo documentation of the judge, Philip Hayes in Lubbock, who has been displayed with the guns up next to the Red Raider. However, he's got a bachelor's degree and a law degree from Texas Tech. We all remember the Charles Bediako situation for Bama. He gets a favorable judge who's a Bama fan, whatever. Another judge, also with degrees from Bama, was like, nope. So there's precedent on both sides. It's not as simple as just saying, oh, it's a Texas Tech grad, it's automatically going through, because there's actually evidence in past cases, not the same case type as this, whether it's Joey Aguilar, Trinidad Chambliss, several instances of it going one way or the other with judges who have degrees from those schools. So I don't think we can say, yeah, it is funny that this judge is a big Texas Tech guy, Red Raider. But that doesn't automatically mean this thing's going to go through. Now, the timing's interesting too. It's probably not going to court. There's a timing issue because Sorsby has to get this injunction in his favor. Otherwise, he's going to look to try to enroll in the supplemental draft, declare for that, which is like June 22nd is the deadline. So it has to move pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. It's a odd defense. By the way, he mentioned in the affidavit, because he was at Indiana and was placing bets on that team, that he was not playing in games, but his defense was that he was placing bets to feel more connected to his teammates so he could feel the need to root for them on their individual stat lines. Again, this is a wild defense. We'll see if it works, but that's a first. That's for sure.
Hey, real quick, guys, can you imagine if Sorsby had actually ended up at LSU when they were targeting him? This is already a huge story, but bake it into the whole Lane Kiffin fiasco. It's already massive, but if we were talking about this in the SEC, would be even bigger.
Absolutely. We'll see what happens. Texas Tech certainly hoping he can at least get eligibility for the upcoming season. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show up next here on the Game.